And in different roles, too. Like, it's different every time.
Yeah.
So, S. Cruz, thank you so much for your comment. A copy of Music to Go By, it's on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Go By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or on Facebook. We publish every show there as well. And if you comment there and we read it on the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Go By.
And definitely follow us on Twitter. I'm at Carl Franklin, and he's at Rich Campbell. Send us a tweet. You know, Twitter doesn't have hot reload. No, it doesn't.
True. It does not.
Actually, it probably doesn't need it. Probably.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I think it's just the F5 key.
Right. All right. So when we were putting the show together, I realized that the last show we did with Miguel de Icaza was so long ago that his bio was only partially correct. But if we were to list off all of the things that he's done and that he is, we wouldn't have any time left to talk to him. So he just said, just call me an open source developer and advocate and a Microsoft distinguished engineer. Okay, that's good. Miguel de Icaza, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I think that works.
Yeah.
It's true also.
It is true.
Yeah.
Can we also call you things like, the savior of .NET? Maybe?
Oh, no. It's a team effort.
I know, but come on.
Been
let's be honest. I mean, without Mono and without the open sourceness of .NET, we wouldn't be where we are today. .NET may still be a Windows technology.
Yeah, well, I'm happy that it's not. I'm happy that I'm happy that it's now pretty much universal and that we can run it from
absolutely
really everything, from the tiniest embedded systems to the largest supercomputers.
So I have that headshot, and I've used it a few times, and it shows up on Twitter, and you always tease me when I use it. That is from the O'Reilly conference in 2001, where you announced the Mono project.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, was that the photo in red, the one with the extended arms? Because that was a very
It's a very straight up headshot, but you're like 26, right? Like you look young in this
roughly.
photo.
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, roughly 30s maybe. Yeah, early 30s.
2001.
28. Yeah.
Yeah, 28.
You're good.
28.
You're good. Yes.
I've only been working on you and I we talked an entire day about your history of .NET. A rainy day in Boston 2 or 3 years ago now. I'm still working on the book, friend. Like it's still
awesome.
going. It's hard. It's been a slog for me, but it's still a joy in the sense that it's such a great story. But as I've written various versions of the history of .NET and tested it on audiences, often I pull up that picture and people take photos of that shot. He goes, "Is that really Miguel?" It's like, yeah, but that is from when you said you would make Mono, which in my mind, it's like, that's 2001. That's you talking about making .NET cross-platform and open source.
Yeah,
a decade before everybody else.
Yeah.
Well, what is interesting is now, as in retrospect, you make me feel old because that was 20 years ago. That was I remember. It was a good O'Reilly conference, and
well, this is almost like Miguel de Icaza. You bet your life. Like this is your life. Rather, I have 2 fond memories of you. One is, of course, at that famous party at the top of the Standard in Los Angeles during PDC 2003.
Sounds about right. It's in that neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah. It was the Longhorn thing?
It was 2003 because I was there with my wife.
Yeah.
And we had just gotten married.
And Don Box played, and sang you a song, Miguel, to the tune of Michelle by the Beatles. And I played guitar. And he danced with a rose in his teeth, I think, and gave you a rose. He was trying to court you to come to Microsoft.
Yeah, it was a recruiting interview. Yeah, I remember that. I was recruiting event.
And it was great fun. But yeah, he was very serious about hiring you. And of course, you were going to Novell and all of that stuff at the time. So the other memory I have is doing a show with you on .NET Rocks in August of 2004. This is episode 75. For reference, this is show 1779. So over 1,000 shows ago. And at the time, and I know I've told this story for the old timers But there might be people who don't understand this. At the time, Microsoft was threatened by Linux, because it was a Windows-centric world back then, and they saw Linux as a threat to Windows. And, therefore, you were kind of persona non grata at Microsoft.
Was this the interview in the show floor? Didn't you have was there a booth? I remember there was an interview at a booth. And it was live. I think it was live with a bunch of people, listening on the sides. Was that the one?
That sounds right. Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I remember that our friends at MSDN, who are all good friends of all of us now, were mirroring the downloads because we were worried about bandwidth at the time. We couldn't pay our bandwidth bill. And so they had a mirror.
Uh-huh.
And your show was mysteriously left off of the list of shows. And when I inquired, hey,
yeah.
what happened to Miguel's show? I think the answer was a vague, yeah, we can't publish that one. I'm like, well, I publish it.
Yeah, there were a number. Yeah, I think that the Microsoft of that era definitely was in the boat of we'll pretend it doesn't exist, which was bizarre, right? Because
it was bizarre.
They had submitted all these specs to ECMA,
right?
And but I guess it was one of those things where if you acknowledge that you have competition, you don't want to acknowledge the competition.
Yeah,
kind of on those big high tech keynotes where you allude.
Never say their name, right?
Never say their name. Exactly. I think that it was something along those lines.
Yeah. I remember Bill Gates being great about he never talked about Netscape. He talked about down level browsers.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, different time. And what happened? It's completely 180 degrees turned around now. With Satya embracing open source, everything just changed. And it was the Mono project that kept that open source version of .NET alive while they had their head in the sand.
Yeah,
you
those
deserve
dark
a lot
days.
of credit.
I remember saying that in 2011 on the show. It says because that was after Anders had moved on to what we would eventually know of as TypeScript, and Mads was taking over C#.
Yeah,
and we'd just seen the build conference where they didn't talk about .NET; they talked about WinJS.
The dark
that was
years.
devastating.
It was devastating. And I think I said on the show, I think Miguel Diaz-Caso may be the keeper of C#. I think he may be the guy who's currently our best advocate for C# in the community.
We were very excited about it.
Yeah, and in fact, it's funny because roughly around this time, there was certainly a dread that that .NET was going away in the community, and and we were starting to launch this product on iOS and Android, and of course, our future depended on .NET being successful. So, this mood was not good. This mood was not good. And there was a conference somewhere in New York. I can't remember exactly where, but we had there was a public part of my talk and then a secret part of the talk.
Mm-hmm.
And the secret part was like, hey, listen, I don't want to create a lot of waves, but this is our plan in case, Microsoft bails out on this. And we showed what we thought C# should become. And, all the changes that we wanted to do, that up until that point, we've been, we had decided to be compatible, 100% compatible. And we avoided always forks or changes that were incompatible. Mm-hmm. But we decided, we'll do a preview here of what we would do if Microsoft decides to not invest in .NET. So and at the time, I think we called it S#. I don't know where the S came from, but it was going to be a fork of the C# language with assorted features. I'll try to dig up the slides.
Interesting.
Our contingency plan was making the tablet show, right? we came out of build saying, "Hey, what if .NET doesn't rock?"
That's right. So, is .NET done?
Yes.
There was barely any mention. There was one slide that somebody showed with WinJS being the star. And in the middle of the stack somewhere, there was the three words CLR, but the words .NET didn't exist anywhere in that whole build. And we were horrified.
Oh, yes. Oh, I was horrified. And we had one of those at the time. We used to run this guerrilla events at every Microsoft conference, right? So Microsoft would have their conference, and we would have a satellite conference to essentially talk about Mono and try to get some folks excited. And it was grim. It was a fun event, right? Because we got everybody that was disappointed came to our talk in a hotel nearby. You had to walk like a mile or something.
I remember an old PDC, and you were there as an attendee, and the regional directors were taking a picture on the staircase. And you walked by, and every regional director was like, Miguel, come on, get in the shot, get in the shot. Yes. And the regional director person was like, no.
Oh, yes.
And my God, different days.
Yeah, somebody has a photo because somebody took the photos of that person. I can't remember who it was, but he was a famous guy at the time, getting me out of the photo shoot. So there's a whole sequence of somebody pulling me out of there. But it was a fun event because we did a little bit of guerrilla marketing there too.
Right.
We used Post-it notes. And what happened was that somebody had said, listen, I know that you didn't get a slot. I think they would requested like a BOF session, and we got a lot of votes, and then mysteriously we lost the votes. So they said, well, you don't have a session. So some speaker, I can't remember who it was, said, tell you what, why don't I give you half my session? So I'll rush through my thing and you do half the session. So it was kind of a subversive move from whoever that speaker was. I can't remember anymore. It might have been an academic, and that was pitching some language as part of Project 7. And so we had to go through the conference and put Post-it notes on all of the agendas to say, hey, the second part is going to talk about Mono.
Wow. I just found that video of Don singing Miguel to you, and we're going to put it. It's a YouTube video. Somebody posted it up on YouTube. And of course, this horrified the Microsoft legal team.
Right.
Because of the parody law. We weren't parodying the song. We were parodying.
That's why. Yes.
You. Yeah. But anyway, we'll put that in the show notes. So, my God, so much has changed. And you went from the Xamarin team when that was, forming with the open source.net to Maui, I guess. And then you broke off at Maui time?
No, actually, I've been working for the past couple of years in some AI initiatives inside the company. They're not public yet. They will be at some point. So I've been doing that. I've been keeping a low profile on our efforts. What I can say is that I'm very excited about the Onyx runtime, right? That it's Microsoft's AI accelerator, right? So if you have a AI model that you want to run, we run it very fast for you. So for the last couple of years, I do keep an eye on .NET. I still attend the team meetings and some high level discussions, but I have been missing from the picture, from the day-to-day picture for about 2 years now.
And so is Maui shaping up like you hoped it would?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it is a great effort. I was never a Microsoft person, but I believe in the old Microsoft credo. Should we call it credo? I'm kind of more of the old Microsoft style of don't break APIs.
Right.
I think that breaking APIs gives you a tremendous amount of leverage. You can clean up bad decisions. You can implement the right solutions, and there's something to be said about that. And Maui definitely took that route. But I was more on the bend backwards into anything you have to do to prevent people from making changes to their code, right? Preserve their code.
Yeah.
And my view is, every time you tell people you got to make changes to your code base to upgrade, people might choose not to upgrade, right?
Certainly.
It's like, hey, listen, I'll just stay on my current thing. And if we build a new project, I'll take a look at your stuff.
Right.
But all new stuff is, it's a little flaky. You need to wait a few generations. So my fear has always been that when you introduce a breaking change, you give people permission to shop around.
Right.
Right. It's a moment where you say, you know what, I'm going to see what other people are doing.
If I got to review this code anyway, I might as well review it with an eye to something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can stay in the ecosystem and say, I'm going to try Uno, right? Uno platform,
right,
which is compatible with WinUI, or, I'll try Avalonia, or there's a couple more out there. Or you can just say, hey, there's a lot of buzz around alternative options, right? Like Flutter, or there's a lot of buzz around React Native. So, I was no longer involved when these decisions happened. And keeping compatibility was going to be costly. So the team, they made that choice. I think the result is very pretty, but I still fear that it gives people, an option to shop around and
gives them an out.
But it also is if they stay with you, it's because they did look elsewhere and go, it's still, this is the easiest path and the most understandable path for me. Like in some ways, I appreciate that because it makes people not just pick your product by default. I think we've got enough legacy running around that now. Although I will also argue the other side of this of getting .NET open source, building out core, all of that work inevitably led to some breaking changes that I think they went into carefully. But and now that they've had success with it, it's like, hey, let's have more breaking changes. Like I think they're almost getting too casual about revising APIs now.
Yes. Anyways, I think that the story with .NET Core has panned out great. It's been a painful transition for a lot of people that had code on framework and they wanted to move to core. It's been painful, but those that have done the transition have extracted a lot of value out of it. It's a refreshed, it's an updated language with, we've learned so much about the kind of applications that people are building, how they're building it, how they're scaling them, how they're tuning them. And all of that came back into the language and the frameworks. And keeping it compatible would have been incredibly, incredibly hard. So it was just, I think, at the end of the day, .NET framework was incredibly difficult to move just through the logistics of it. So it was a painful move, but I think that those that moved are enjoying tremendously the outcome. And now it's moving very fast. It's getting a lot of really great design and great APIs in place. I think it's solving a whole class of problems that 10 years ago, it was very disappointing, right? 10 years ago, you're like, oh God, .NET has so many deficiencies.
Right.
It hasn't aged that well, or it hasn't kept up with the world that well. And now it's like, it's up to date. It's keeping up. It's leading in the space. It's truly a joy to work with .NET, with .NET Core 6.
I'd actually like to ask you both this question, which is, I see still pockets of developers who still think that .NET is a Windows oriented, Microsoft heavy, we're going to push our products on you framework. And, it was at one time in history and it no longer is. But what are you seeing in terms of, that perception? Is that perception going away finally? Or is it still, are we still fighting that battle?
I think that it's largely gone. But, we watch people hold on to very strange beliefs and ideas, and they just never go away. And we're watching it now with all these social things, right? So I think that the anecdote that you mentioned is definitely true. There's certainly some people in that space, they routinely get slapped publicly, right? They say, hey, dude.
Maybe they weren't going to use it anyway, right?
Yeah, it's like, dude, this has not been the case for 5 years.
Right.
So there's certainly some pockets of people that haven't kept up with this. And, it's normal. Nobody can keep up with this industry, right? It's things are moving so incredibly fast everywhere.
And especially if you talk about an event like thinking back to 2000 and the Department of Justice and that whole, Microsoft pernicious monopoly and things 20 something years ago. If you just said, okay, well, they're the bad guys, I don't pay attention to them anymore, then it's easy to have still be, oh, but they're the bad guys.
And that sentiment is still alive, I have to say. I mean, I just had a friend left the company, and he worked at Microsoft, right? And he went to our competitor, and I said, hey, you shouldn't go there because my reasons, right? And he goes, yeah, but Microsoft was a monopoly. I'm like, what, dude? That was a gazillion years ago.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I mean, I think that we hold on to these stories, or
I can think of a few other companies that are filling the monopoly role right now.
I think as part of it is the new wave of problems with tech companies is making that old Microsoft thing less and less relevant.
Oh my God, that looks like Lego Duplo at this point, right? It was child's game. It was like sticks and stones.
Yeah, right? The other thing is that our industry grows so rapidly. There are so many less than 5 years experienced developers in this world today, where Microsoft isn't even in their radar. I mean, or just recently has coming into their radar was like, who are these guys? The old guy hates them for some reason, but I see no evidence of this. Like, why wouldn't I use this?
Yeah, you know how they say that you change your the body cells every God knows how many months.
7 years, yeah,
something like that. I think the same thing has happened at Microsoft.
I think I've held on to mine. Sorry, I'm just saying.
Well, so have I with the pandemic. But,
mine are a little hard to die.
I know. Gotta do strength training, man. Gotta do strength training. That's what I'm doing now, and failing out.
I'm doing 12-ounce curls at the moment. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail your.
No, but I think that I think that two things happened. One was definitely we as a community, all of the tech community, we have definitely leveled up our understanding of the industry or sophistication. Mm-hmm. We have a more sophisticated understanding of how platforms work, how we cooperate, how we don't cooperate.
Right.
Open source is now something that everybody understands what it is, what are the parameters. So I think that as an industry, we changed. And, it took years, and, even the old guard understood it. Mm-hmm. And the new guard was definitely, very excited about it, right? The TikTok community, takes open source for granted.
Oh, well, thank God. I mean, the TikTok community, we really care what they think.
I love TikTok. I love
you
TikTok.
Do?
Anyways.
Yeah, but isn't it all about dancing and like,
it is.
Yes,
it is all about dancing. But what I find fascinating about TikTok is, I mean, I guess it depends on who you follow, but
I suppose
what I find interesting, is the human spirit, the human creativity. When people remix ideas and, you play on the same joke over and over, and the jokes get more complicated. They end up being like inside jokes, but they get so funny as you spend more time on this thing.
Well, that's true. That is true. And, everything my daughters have showed me on TikTok, I've laughed at. Whereas the stuff that goes viral on, on Facebook is usually like cars falling off a cliff or something, or, guys slipping on a banana peel or taking it in the nuts. It's like the America's funniest home videos worldwide.
Yeah, it's just, I see this as, at least the TikTok that I get recommended is like the triumph of the human spirit.
I love it.
Right? People sharing their most intimate moments or their funniest ideas, and people playing with each other.
All right, you've convinced me. All right.
Anyways,
it is a cultural phenomenon, no two ways about it.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there's bad parts. I mean, apparently the algorithm will, if you like bad stuff, it'll show you bad stuff.
I guess my point is that, is there really a tech community on TikTok, or is it all just kind of?
Well, what I mean about that, when I did that throwaway comment about TikTok, it was mostly that, as we hire new people, right, at Microsoft, we have, every year we hire people out of college, and these people that are being hired out of college have lived in an open source world, right?
Right.
So now now we're dealing with the opposite problem with Microsoft, which is like, oh no, let me explain. Some code we don't publish, and they go, what? Right. So that's really what I meant by the TikTok.
I see.
It's really more like the public understanding is so different. The world as a whole has changed, and even the old guard has changed. Right. But it's fascinating. I mean, the most stark and contrasting features when you talk to these young people that have never seen the previous world. Right.
Right.
I mean, these are kids that started programming 4 years ago and or 5 years ago, and
it's an open source world.
It's an open source world. It's an iOS world. It's an Android world.
It's a JavaScript world.
Windows has been this, the machine that you use for a few things at home, and maybe it's what you connect to the printer. But it, to them, it's a different beast.
And gentlemen, I have to interrupt for one moment for this very important message.
There's always something new from our sponsor, Text Control. They just released version 30 of their document processing library that includes new document collaboration features. Using TX Text Control, you can integrate online document editing, document signing, collaboration, and PDF processing into your ASP.NET and ASP.NET Core web applications. Whether you need to create PDF invoices, quotations, or reports, TX Text Control provides the developer libraries for all document-related tasks. Check out the new features and see their technologies in action by visiting the live demo at demos.textcontrol.com. You know, time is of the essence when identifying and resolving issues in your software, and our friends at Raygun are here to help. Their brand new alerting feature is now available for crash reporting and real user monitoring to make sure you're quickly notified of the errors, crashes, and front-end performance issues that matter most to you and your business. Set thresholds for your alert based on an increase in error count, a spike in load time, or new issues introduced in the latest deployment, along with custom filters that give you even greater control. Assign multiple users to ensure the right team members are notified, with alerts linked directly to the issue in Raygun, taking you to the root cause faster. Never miss another mission-critical issue in your software again. Try Raygun Alerting today and create a world-class issue resolution workflow that gives you and your customers peace of mind. Visit raygun.com to learn more. Their simple usage-based plans start from as little as $4 per month, with unlimited apps and users. That's raygun.com to start your free 14-day trial.
And we're back. It's .NET Rocks. I'm Richard Campbell. That's Carl Franklin.
Yo.
Talking to our friend Miguel de Icaza about this amazing past 20 years. And I don't know if this is a little more future speculative, but, we were just at the end of the first half here talking about open source. Mm-hmm. To me, the past couple of years of open source has transformed remarkably. And I think it's the tech giants are all doing open source very seriously now. Like Microsoft moving a non-trivial amount of their development teams to do everything via GitHub. Like just suddenly GitHub used to be a place where people spent their volunteer time, their free time, their unpaid time on. And now there's a large number of people whose full-time job is contributing into GitHub.
I still have customers that when I suggest they put their code in a GitHub repo say, yeah, but we don't want to share it. They don't understand that it's private by default.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in your thinking around, you've been in the open source community since before it was cool.
Yeah.
And before GitHub.
I think the one thing that still remains, we have now as an open source community found different ways of financing open source with some degree of failure and success. Mm-hmm. And it is probably the thing that I would like to see more models evolve, right? Mm-hmm. So today we have a very strict definition of what open source is, right? So open source, everybody can use it, modify, redistribute, etc. And there's companies that have found that this model doesn't necessarily work for them. Because, people can take the open source product and monetize it. If you're a company that has a good sales and marketing channel, you can essentially take open source products and more effectively market and sell that versus a company that is pure open source and giving all their work away. So there has been a movement to find alternative licenses for financing it. And some of them have gone, some people have complained, some people feel it's unfair. But I think that at the end of the day, we haven't found that recipe for making open source self-sustaining or people to be able to pay their bills with open source. some people get lucky and they work for Microsoft doing open source, and that is great. But some others don't, right? And there is a struggle. And I really wish that we could find solutions to this problem.
Well, it's the Wikipedia problem too, right?
To some extent.
You go to Wikipedia and the first thing you get hit with is, please support us or we might go away.
Yeah. So, I just saw that Chris Lattner, this guy that did LVM and Swift and work in TensorFlow and recently was doing CPUs, he just left his last company and went to build his own company. And, this just happened yesterday. And I really like this idea. I mean, I think that maybe what we do need to do is streamline and coach people that have interesting open source projects into how they can turn those into viable businesses. So I think, that's something that I wish we could develop more and we could explore more, and hopefully, even build structures or build organizations that can support developers in this quest, right? So I think open source has been great, but I wish that people that contribute to open source didn't have to do it out of their, that it didn't have to come out of the kids' college fund.
Like, right? Charity. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's still an unfair problem, and there's a lot of people looking at the problem, right? There's, some folks say, hey, fund me on Patreon or GitHub sponsors,
right.
Or Kickstarters. And it's kind of a Wild West. But what this indicates to me is that there is a serious need. And I think that we do need to come up with solutions or encourage, that not everything has to be pure open source, that we're okay with alternative licenses like the Cockroach DB or what's the other one? Elastic? Anyways, those folks crank those models.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of this is you build the product for free, open source, run it if you want, and then you sell a cloud service for it. Like that to me seems like the Elastic model, where of course, not all the source code is public. You don't publish everything, and I keep reminding people of Microsoft about Microsoft like that. It's like, yeah, sure, most of what's coming out of .NET is open source. You don't see a whole lot of open source out of Azure. They're still doing. Yeah. They're still filing patents on closed source, like the same old fashioned business model that Microsoft was built on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to your question of where I see open source, I don't know that this is going to get fixed, but I wish it got fixed, because all of these people, they deserve a good life and they deserve to be compensated for their work. So I very much would like to see that space succeed. And
to Richard's point, there's a company that you guys probably know of. Jeff Atwood, who was one of the founding members of Stack Overflow. He started basically a project called Discourse, and it is a forum, a forum like Stack Overflow with all the great features of Stack Overflow. I know because I've used it. And it is open source and you can run it on your own servers, but they also have a fully managed service where they do everything for you. And yeah, you pay, but you have no headache. So just like what Richard was saying, that's a good model if you have something that is a server or a service that you can open source. But so many of these projects are just little tools, right?
Yeah, and I think maybe I'm talking myself into building this, but it would be nice if all of these leaf things, if you could have a shared marketing and sales infrastructure that helps funnel some funds into these folks. And certainly the server stuff is amazing. I love what Jeff has done. I mean, I think that the world is using Discourse. I mean,
Discourse is awesome.
Everywhere I go, there's a Discord forum, and I think it's better than
all Discord. The other Discord is a different thing.
This is Discourse, right?
Discourse is
not
the
Discord.
Forum. Yeah, Discord is there's a whole bunch of these things that sound the same.
Anyways, And
But isn't this what
Ghost
the
is another
Apache
big one.
Foundation has done, Miguel? Like they've now
No,
raised enough money that they're funding a certain number of open source projects?
no. Well, I mean, I don't know to what extent they fund. I think they're
Hmm.
more of an umbrella project like the .NET Foundation,
Yeah,
and special interest groups finance individuals in those things. Like for example, Apache TVM. Well, it's open source. There's a company that contributes a lot of the work, right?
right.
AutoML does a lot of the heavy lifting there. But no, I think that what I would like to see is for all these little tools and little libraries have essentially a way of financing those folks in a way that is not just like GitHub sponsors or Patreons or pay me $5 and unlock my next blog post, right?
Yeah.
Which is the
Buy
people
me a
shouldn't be
coffee.
spending on their time on blog posts or stickers or I'll send you a shirt.
Right.
I wish they could just make money off their work.
Right.
And I don't have an answer. That's a problem. But
No,
this is
it's not a simple problem.
Well,
right?
if people are
No.
going to put stuff out for free, it's very hard to compete with that. That's just the law of economics.
But I also think you get into this disparity situation where here's a volunteer person who in their part-time built a tool that they thought was useful for their work. They put it on GitHub because it was a nice place to keep it. They were talking to some other friends. They wanted to use it too. So they make it an available project. A few folks now are using it. They all benefit from it. It's good. Pure volunteer. It's something on the side. Handful of peers that work on it. It helps them.
Yeah.
It then gets the attention of a large tech corporation who realizes, hey, this is a tool our own people are using as well. It increases our productivity, and they assign an FTE to it. Hey, we need some features put in. We'll do it. So the full-time employee paid 40 hours a week, maybe not in love with the project. This is their job, right? Now starts making contributions based on what the PM inside of that company thinks is important for the project.
Right. They don't want it to go away.
Well, this person can outproduce any volunteer any day of the week. It's their job. Like you suddenly have, this is where the disparity comes in. A group of volunteers who built the thing the way they wanted to as peers suddenly has a contributor that's working full time on it. It sounds like a good thing until, that a volume of production can change the shape of the project, substantially. It's a disparity of performance.
Well, another fork of that scenario, Richard, is that a customer that's using the tool wants changes made to it and, contacts the developer of it. Developer says, hey, man, I got a full-time job here. If you want me to make changes, here's my rate, and here's how much it's going to cost. And so things can happen, piecemeal at a time because of that, because one customer wants changes done to it. And I think that's probably the way that most of these projects operate. They just put stuff out there until somebody needs it and relies on it and wants a change and is willing to pay for that change.
There's this cute cartoon making the rounds. I don't know who the author is, but it's a bunch of blocks stacked on top of each other, and it's a big tower, right? And I think it's like, I don't know, it represents some big software industry. And the whole thing depends on this tiny little thin block, and it says open source maintainer doing the work on
Yes.
these weekends, right? It's just like, we've built entire industries on things that are not properly funded. Like, a couple of weeks ago, we had what is probably the largest security hole in history, right? The Log4j.
Log4j, yeah.
And, somebody accepted the request. It looked like a good feature. And now it's turned out into this massive problem, right? And
I've been looking at the news, though. I didn't see many Microsoft problems over Log4j.
I'm not sure.
Not a lot of Java in Microsoft, perhaps?
Well,
Yeah.
I mentioned that we have some Java, right?
But I didn't see any,
yeah, I
issues
think
where
that
it
everybody
brought
that
anything
has Java really is keeping it very quiet right now until they have a chance. But it is not limited to Java, by the way.
True.
It is unfortunate that Java got hit by
That was a convenient vector.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I'm sure that
none of us throw stones. Everyone's been there.
you know what? I used to throw stones at Microsoft as a sport when I was like 17 or 18. Right? It's like, oh, they have a security hole, ha 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 ha, and
We used to throw stones at Linux too.
Yeah,
On .NET Rocks, we had a thing called the Linux Vulnerability of the Week.
Yeah, no, I don't make fun of that anymore. We're all royally and totally screwed. We live in borrowed time.
Yep,
all of us.
I agree.
We'll live. I mean, we're barely surviving, and it is a disaster.
And now the ransomware has turned into destructoware. I don't know if you've seen this, but the latest trend in ransomware is to not encrypt your data, but delete it, all of it. Thank you for playing. Goodbye. And we talk about this and this is a good opportunity for me to plug my relatively new podcast with Patrick Hines and Dwayne LaFlotte called Security This Week. SecurityThisWeek.com is all I'm going to say. We laugh, we talk about security. But that's not a laughing matter. This was something that the FBI or the CISA has warned and United States companies to be prepared for destructoware because it's coming. Ouch.
Yeah, we had this thing with what was that? The electricity company a few months ago. They got hit by some hackers. And then there's the blackmail, right? I mean, we don't talk about that because, if they succeed with the blackmail, they succeed with the blackmail, right?
Patrick says we should make it illegal to pay ransoms.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's all well and fine until all the data gets destroyed, right? And people die.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know how you enforce that. I mean,
it's just not that simple.
Yeah, I know.
It's a desperate situation. You're a hospital, you have people
in
the emergency room. What do? The hospital's like, sorry, there's a law.
Schools are particularly vulnerable. And we have a habit of giving criminals career advice. But, if you want a successful ransomware attack, schools are vulnerable because they typically have insecure IT. And, kids got to go to school. You have to have data. You have to have grades. So it's unfortunate.
Yeah, so I stopped laughing a long time ago because it's security holes up and down the stack. I mean, it's just a matter of time to find them, but we've built a civilization out of sand. So it's just a matter of time until the wave comes in.
Yeah, and on that happy note, what do you see for the future of .NET, security risks aside?
Well, the thing about .NET is I really like that it continues to be that first of all, like we said earlier in the show, it's managed to keep up with the needs of the modern world. So one thing that I'm really proud and very happy is that now .NET is no longer kind of lagging behind or super tied to Windows or lacking, core interop capabilities that everybody has kind of taken for granted. And at the same time, one thing that .NET has going for it is the fantastic tooling that comes with it, right?
Yeah.
Either Visual Studio Code, the support that comes with it, the long-term maintenance
the community
agreements that come with it. And it's certainly the community. But what I mean is that these days, as the dust settles on all the excitement on the web and all the excitement on microservices and all of this stuff, right? Many things have been sorted out. So the necessity of being in the latest and greatest unstable platform is not as important anymore because we now have answers. So I think that .NET is now a fabulous and fantastic choice for people doing these servers, right? It comes with a great performance benefit and it interrupts great, and you can find a lot of people that use it, and the IDE does a lot of the work for you. So I think that from that perspective, .NET is great, and the ongoing investments to make it better is fantastic. So that gives me a lot of hope. On the other hand, .NET is not suitable for every workload, right? I mean, we run everywhere, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be a replacement for a C or C++ library.
Low level, hardware dependent, those kinds of things.
That sort of thing. I mean, you don't want a garbage collector in the kernel, right?
No.
And what you can, things that are acceptable in the .NET world, like generating code dynamically, are not necessarily acceptable for other scenarios. So, the only thing I wish is that we start to wean ourselves off, our tech community, that we can start the movement away from C and C++. Towards other safer languages, right? And I know that the poor C++ guys, those guys are trying very hard to to make things better. But it's so
and their language keeps modernizing too, right?
It gets modern, but the problem with C++ is that it is unsafe by default.
It's bare metal.
So it's very easy. It's very easy to do everything right with the new idioms. And then, I'm just going to take a little shortcut here, just a tiny shortcut, and then the whole thing blows up, right?
And that's a security risk or an instability risk or any number of
the whole thing, right? And
pointers,
the whole thing.
Pointers to pointers to pointers to pointers to pointers.
Yeah, so we gotta start weaning ourselves off these languages, and there's all kinds of good reasons, right? Like, well, the code works. You don't rewrite it. We've maintained it. We haven't found holes.
Aren't there still situations where C++ is necessary just because of performance, drivers and things like that?
I think that Rust should be.
That's what I was thinking too. We are starting to see new languages emerge, like Rust, that are good for that.
That are as bare metal as C++ and not as insecure? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but I mean, basically, yes. Basically, Rust provides that mechanism, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of these compilers all end up using the LLVM code generator, right?
So thanks, Mr. Latimer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the point being, then, we're using a higher level language essentially to generate safe C++.
Essentially, think about it. Like, for example, the other day I was bitching and moaning I was writing some code in Swift, and I was like, good Lord, why is this thing checking integers? I profiled the code as like, why is this doing an overflow check on an addition? And I thought, well, this is horrible. I don't want to write the extended version of this.
Right.
I just don't want it to be checking overflows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I was complaining about this and, having a little, moment, engineer moment about this, one of those rants on a channel.
I'm good enough to not overflow my integers. Stop checking.
I know my integers. I
can do this.
And like 2 days later, there's a security hole where somebody used one of these innocent looking
integer overflows.
I was like, exactly. Okay, I'm gonna shut up. I don't know if you saw this latest security hack. There's a fabulous security hack I think it's on TIFF images, where the exploit consists of overflowing or generating images that create a virtual machine. And they build a virtual machine out of AND gates, OR gates, and NOT gates, right? So this is what they do.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think
first of all, beautiful.
PDF. It's a PDF. So PDF, you can embed some chunks of operations that are an image, and they found a way of overflowing it in such a way that you could concatenate these things and you could compute AND, OR, and NOT, which are the principles behind flip-flops. So this company, it was actually NSO, the Israeli company that sells hacks for iPhones. Yeah.
And
what they did is
gray area company. We don't know if they're good guys or bad guys, right?
Oh, they're bad guys. So anyways, they built this PDF payload that essentially contains a virtual machine that executes code to hack your phone based on a PDF.
Yes. We talked about this.
Oh, good Lord. So anyways, I have to.
And you don't even have to open it, right? If somebody sends it to your phone, you're screwed.
Yes. So, I withdraw my objections to additional checks on overflows and things that safe languages are doing. We got to do it. We got to do it.
Well, and also speaks to the reality, which is we've got enough compute. Your CPU has the time to check your work.
Yes, it is more important these days to be safe than to be slightly faster.
Yeah.
And
that's the core argument when we get back to this whole C++ conversation is like your defensive performance is less and less relevant. Yeah. We have such powerful CPUs and the risks are so significant.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to eliminate them, by the way, C++. I just think that as we write new code, we really should make a strong case for why we need to keep doing it on C++.
Yeah.
And the reality is that the majority of the performance is not where you think. The majority of the performance loss is not where you think it is. So yes, write your tight decoder in C code, but 99% of the rest should be a high-level language.
Well, and it's a handful of people who are carefully checking each other's work to minimize security risks. Like there's a high overhead to writing code that way too. for your day-to-day performance coding on a more abstract language like a Rust is safer. And in the end, it's spitting out C++ anyway. It's going through LLVM.
So if Rust can spit out C++, is there any way to take C# code and spit out C++?
I guess you can. I mean, in fact, the first version of the Mono AOT compiler worked that way, right? It generates C++. And in fact, the Unity .NET compiler works that way. They take IL code and they generate C++. So it's definitely possible. I think that some of the slowdown that you see with C# is really things like, hey, we're going to check your array indexes.
Yeah.
Right? If you say array of element 10, we're going to check that array has 10 elements.
Right.
Right. And in C++ is like, you know what you're doing, buddy?
It's your foot.
We're gonna get to that element right now.
It's your foot. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
that's very fair.
So before we go, Miguel, I have to ask you now. I know that you're a proponent of low carb diets, and you supported the keto thing that I did for a long time. And so I know you eat low carb. I want to know, what is your favorite low carb Mexican dish?
Well, it's low carb, not zero carb, but carnitas.
Yeah.
I would have said carnes or carne asada instantly.
Or there's this thing called pozole. I don't know if you know.
Yeah. It's a hominy soup, right?
Yes. Soup with the hominy is technically not low carb, but
pozole.
Now I'm going to go and cook it.
It's good stuff. Some cilantro and some lime in there.
Ceviche. Ceviche is very low carb.
Very low carb.
Ceviche. Oh my God! Now I want to go do that too.
And so many different kinds of ceviche too, right? Like
I have a low carb tortilla recipe that I am going to share with you, and maybe I'll just put it in the notes. But it's corn texture, but not made from corn. And you make it in the microwave, 90 seconds in the microwave, and you have a stretchable, wonderful corn-like tortilla.
Please send it.
And I've made some really good stuff with it. All right.
I'm big into the low carb stuff. I'm big into. I mean, I break my rule, and I tell my friends, I sin more often than I should.
But that's it. I mean, once you understand it, it's like you at least you know what you're doing to yourself, right? Whereas before we were in the dark.
The other piece that I kind of missed for a long time really is that
crunch.
You also gotta do exercise, right? And not the aerobic exercise, kind of just the regular one. Is you want to build muscle, and there was, and I really never cared about this until somebody shared an X-ray of a tomography of a muscle, right, of an arm, and you could see the muscle in a 70-year-old that exercises and one that doesn't. One that does strength training and the other one. And it's like, oh, well, no wonder these people cannot walk. I mean, there's really nothing there to sustain it. So anyways, I'm trying to fix that now, Carl. I'm trying to fix that now too.
Well, we'll share some links.
This is all not muscle.
The Coda Flabinator.
Yeah, at this age, you got to start making sure that you're gonna land the plane as nicely as you can.
Well, is there any last minute anything that you want to call out before we end this great conversation? What's on your radar? What are you doing next, or something you want to talk about before we end it?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what to do next. I mean, I have a great project right now, but I'm right now thinking about what is my next step, actually. And I don't know what it is. I do not know what it is. And, there are so many fascinating things to do. And our industry produces so many interesting things that, I'm like the dog at the butcher, right? I can't pick. I can't pick what to do next. So I'll keep you posted. I'll tweet about what I'm going to do next. But, I'm wrapping up this project right now. And
all right, cool.
Right at the point where I got to figure out what to do next.
And if anybody's got a suggestion for you, they can tweet you at?
Yes, at Miguel de Casa at Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, it's great seeing you folks. It's been way too long, and I enjoy talking to you guys. And maybe we'll get together again at a conference soon.
Yeah,
you too,
so.
Miguel. Yeah, we hope so. And thanks for saving
I miss
.NET, buddy.
conferences. Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate
Really
it.
appreciate it.
You're too
Good
kind.
on
You're
you.
too small.
All right. We'll see you next time on .NET Rocks. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Pwop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2000.